Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome into another YouTube live show. John Kurtz with you here tonight, talking some Big 12 football, college football from a Big 12 perspective as always. And tonight, we start the show with our good friends at ESPN projecting 3 Big 12 playoff teams. Not one, not two, but a big 3. Yes, and one of the teams will completely shock you, as it shocked me. We've got that. We've got something special cooking up next week for the Big 12 if all goes as planned in week 3. We'll see if that happens. Plus, I have my Big 12 power rankings for you tonight. Unchanged at the top, but a lot of shuffling below. Last week was definitely the type of week that will throw a wrench into the power rankings, and coaching rumors already circulating, whether it's Mike Gundy being on his way out, Lance Leipold taking a different job. We've already got the coaching carousel in full swing in week 3, because that's college football for you. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel as you file in. All that stuff really helps. You can get in touch on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. If you want to leave a question or comment there, that is a great way to do it if you're not watching live. I will kick off the next show with your comment. I'm going to get to Joe's comment here in just a moment. But also subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Just sent one out today, ofbnews.com to get subscribed. That's ofbnews.com to get subscribed, or you can click the link in the description of this video. So lots of ways to support, lots of ways to find the content, and appreciate all of you who are here and do support. Joe, what's going on, Joe? Joe says, I think the Big 12 championship game this season, by the way, this is from Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. Joe says, I think the Big 12 championship game this season could possibly come down to 2 games. The first is Texas Tech at Utah, week 4. We will talk about that tonight. And week 11, TCU against Iowa State. The 2 teams who win those games, my prediction is go to the championship and the others go 11-1. Well, I like the way this scenario is popping out here, where we could have 2 unbeatens and 2 11-1 teams. I mean, that would be fabulous. For the Big 12. Absolutely fabulous. Joe, you're kind of right on target with a lot of what I want to talk about tonight, my friend. So great comment. Great work by you. And I mean, as of right now, this, like, if you do like a season ends today kind of thing, those would be the 2 biggest games of the season. If you were just going to say everything right now holds true, I mean, those are the obvious top 4 teams in the power rankings right now, based on what they've done so far this year, combined with a little bit of preseason expectation and what you thought of those teams. But I don't know. It's tough to argue anything other than those 4 being the top 4. If you want to say, hey, Baylor has the best win of anybody in the league so far by winning at SMU, I guess maybe that would be your argument to try and pop them into the top 4 somewhere. But I'm with you, Joe. Right now, this looks like it. And it's crazy. Beginning of the year, S&P Plus from Bill Connolly did the top 5 games of the Big 12 season. 4 of them involved K-State. So things have changed mightily as far as that goes. I can't argue too much with that right now, Joe. A lot can change, but I wouldn't argue a ton of that. And I see Joe and Fongway chatting already in the live chat about TCU and when will they be ranked and respect and all that. If you want some TCU respect, my friends, let me deliver to you some TCU respect. Okay, that's how we're kicking off the show, is with some TCU respect. All right. So ESPN says the Big 12 could get not 1, not 2, but 3 teams into the college football playoff. In fact, this was a projection of 3 Big 12 teams into the college football playoff. Yes, really. I'm not kidding. And it's a wilder combination of teams than you could ever imagine. Okay. I'm going to tell you that as well here. You guys know how much I've railed and raged against the machine from last year, what happened with BYU, not getting legitimate at-large consideration, okay? And so national sentiment, not just because of that, but because of what they've seen so far from the Big 12, not quite getting over the hump against teams like Nebraska and Georgia Tech and obviously Auburn, combined with Arizona State stumbling, blowing it. I mean, it was blowing it. Listening this week, by the way, to Kenny Dillingham and his defensive coordinator talk about, oh, no, like that was basically the defensive call. That wasn't really a blown coverage. Like we just tried to dial up some pressure, go make a play and win the game, and happened to give up one-on-one coverage on a deep post and, a 60-yard bomb to lose the game. Love those guys. Appreciate their honesty. I mean, they blew it. You can't have that happen. Anyway, after everybody watches that happen and Arizona State lose to Mississippi State, I'm sure most of the national sentiment right now is one big league. One big league. That's the Big 12. But ESPN, at least one corner of ESPN is here to say that is wrong. All right. How could a third Big 12 team ever get in? This is one thing I wanted to pause and consider, and it's where I said, Joe, you were already like reading my mind on where I'm going to go with the show tonight. You need lots of 0 and 1 loss teams for that to have any shot at working out. You've got to have everybody with 0 or 1 losses competing at the top by the end of the year. This can't be a bunch of parity. This can't be BYU trips up and loses to a sub 500 Kansas team. It cannot be any of that. So if 3 of the 4, Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, or in Joe's situation, 4 of the 4, Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, if they're all sitting there with 0 or 1 loss at the end of the year, I mean, I think that's the only way this scenario would have any shot at playing out. And so say you've got like undefeated Utah against undefeated Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. All right. I'm thinking Iowa State, because of the win over Iowa, at least it's a Big 10 win. Maybe Mark Gronowski does start to figure some things out and they become a 9-win Big 10 team, something like that. Maybe that's your high watermark, like 9-3. Then Iowa State has that win. They lose a tight game to undefeated Utah in the Big 12 championship game. Iowa State gets in with a strong at-large case there. And then you have like Texas Tech, maybe being a 1-loss team or their only loss was to Utah or TCU. I was doing that off the dome, but I haven't broken down all these schedules to see how the math would work out on all that with who's playing who. But you have one of those teams with 1 loss also sitting there. So the scenario here would be, in my eyes, the only way it's possible. You'd have unbeaten league champ, 2 1-loss teams, one who lost a very close Big 12 championship game. Even then, I think just the sheer, no matter what the numbers would tell anybody, I think just the sheer say it out loud test, Big 12 3 teams would just never happen. But don't tell that to Bill Connolly, okay? Don't tell that to Bill Connolly. Bill Connolly of ESPN says this. Well, not Bill Connolly personally. He's using his model, which is S&P Plus. He's using his model. Bill Connolly's S&P Plus says the college football playoff based solely on resume S&P Plus after 3 weeks. Oh, I am sorry, people. I am sorry here. Let me make sure that we are doing this. Okay. College football playoff based solely on resume SP Plus after 2 weeks. This is what it would look like. How wild is this? Okay, you've got 3 Big 12 teams in here. Starting with, if we're going top to bottom, Utah being the number 9 seed, taking on 8 seed Missouri, with the winner playing number 1 Oregon. South Florida at Oklahoma, number 4 being Tennessee. Arizona at Washington, with Florida State as the winner. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing here? Not only is Arizona included in this, Arizona as a playoff team after dominant wins over Hawaii and Weber State, but then they're going to Washington. They're playing Jed Fish. Can you imagine? Now, I love this for college football. That would be amazing if we got something like that. Facing off against the former coach, there is no love lost there at all. Follow Jason Shear to pick up on some of that, who does a great job covering Arizona in the Big 12. But then you've also got TCU as a 2 seed. So there's your TCU respect, Joe and everybody in the live chat. TCU is the 2 seed here. If you were to stop things right now and seed a playoff based on the S&P Plus model and everybody's resume. Look, Bill Connolly's a pretty widely respected guy in college football. This is very clearly done somewhat as just I was going to say somewhat in jest. It's not really in jest. This is done as hey, man, this is like a fun little snapshot of where things are at right now in college football. I don't think Bill Connolly thinks this will actually happen. But that does tell you something about the respect you should be paying TCU at this moment. It does tell you that it's probably a little ridiculous. TCU is not ranked. And it does show that maybe, I mean, we'll see once everybody's playing each other in conference play, but maybe the Big 12 has had a better non-con than people would give it credit for. Some of this is also just a little quirky. Arizona looks improved. They do. Okay. And maybe we should be talking a little bit more about Arizona. Noah Fafita looked like the old Noah Fafita last week. He threw for 300 plus yards and 5 touchdowns. Noah Fafita's got a chance to put himself way back on the radar tomorrow. They're going to be playing K-State in front of the entire nation at 8 o'clock. So there's an opportunity coming for Arizona to really announce their presence, getting back into the mainstream. But TCU at number 2, man. I want to talk more about TCU in just a moment. I also do want to consider, I mean, if you're just looking at these matchups, if you had Utah at Mizzou and then potentially playing Oregon if they win that game, that's awesome too. I mean, I love every bit of that, getting the old Pac-12 rivalry back together, Utah-Oregon, and the contrasting styles there in terms of how the programs operate. And then Utah going to Mizzou. I mean, I just like Utah going to Mizzou in general. I think that's a winnable game. Like, this is not Utah being a bad team, right? Or Mizzou being a bad team, rather. I think Mizzou's fine, but Mizzou is not. This is not like 2022 Georgia that you're having to go face. This is not Ohio State from last year. Like, you're not drawing a team that is clearly so loaded that you're going to have a really, really difficult time going out and beating them. So I would love if that matchup, and that is something of all this, that is something that could happen, at least seems in the realm of possibility. Utah at Mizzou as an 8-9 college football playoff matchup. That is something that seems actually realistic and plausible out of this entire thing. And that's something I would take right now. I'd say sign me up for that. Sign me up for that for the Big 12. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. Okay, thank you to Bill Connolly for that. It was a lot of fun to see that and debate that for right now. Why is TCU so slept on right now? I think they're the most underrated team in the country. And even I keep kind of forgetting about them, but here is a part of it. And this was pointed out earlier in the chat. They didn't play last week, right? So you get the big win on Monday night on Labor Day. Completely crushed North Carolina. Good news cycle out of that, but then you're out of sight, out of mind in a big weekend for the Big 12 last week where there was just a ton happening. Really high profile games, very important results, whether positive or negative, and just were not a part of the conversation because of that. And as we have often discussed here, not ranked, don't have a number by their name, not showing up on the bottom scroll because of that. Just easier to fall out. And I mean, that North Carolina game, unfortunately, the prevailing narrative for most people was always going to be about Bill Belichick from that game. You got to find real college football heads, people who truly care about the game, to find anyone talking about what TCU actually did there. It was going to be, the distraction, Jordan Hudson, the Patriots, Bill Belichick's grudge with the Patriots. You're seeing that storyline. That's where everything immediately pivoted to, not so much TCU, but this is a Big 12 show. So we got to talk about TCU, man. The fact of the matter is they played a Power 4 team on the road and won by 5 touchdowns. They outgained their opponent 542 to 222, outgained them by over 300 yards, had 5 times as many rushing yards, 5x on the rushing yards for TCU. The defense scored a touchdown, like complete win, complete effort. And the one real beef I would have if I were a TCU fan, and it's not like it needs to be a particular, hey, us against Utah beef, but Utah did, in essence, the exact same thing at UCLA against a team that I think is probably similar in caliber. And Utah has gotten a lot more run, it feels like, for that performance than TCU did for theirs, right? Like, that was 43-10. That was 43-10. So similar in score. 43-10, we're talking 33 versus, I mean, basically both teams beat their opponent by 5 touchdowns on the road. Power 4 opponent who may not be that good. And in fact, we've now seen UCLA go and lose to UNLV. So more reason to believe perhaps that North Carolina could be better if we really want to get into the comparative scores game. But they both did that. I just think the difference there is that people have a little bit more, it's like more trust in Utah, which is in some ways crazy because TCU just played for a national championship 3 seasons ago, but Utah had just built up so much consistency as a program and respect from that. TCU has been more up and down with higher highs, but much lower lows in the last decade. It's about all I can come up with. But if we're going to tell it like it is and be objective, I mean, TCU should be in the same sort of conversation that Utah is right now, if anybody's having it. So there's your TCU respect. Okay. Mad respect to the Frogs, Joe. I hope you do appreciate that. TCU deserves the conversation, the chat. You are right that Utah does have one more game, but that was over Cal Poly. I don't know that that's moving the needle for a lot of people. Next thing that TCU needs to do is, they got to take care of Abilene Christian. I think they'll do that just fine. You got to go beat SMU. For the obvious reasons. SMU playoff team from last year would be a nice non-conference feather in the cap, but also just like that game last year was pretty demoralizing and what kind of took everybody off the scent for TCU, sent them out of the spotlight and had nobody paying enough attention to the way TCU finished the season last year and the things that Josh Hoover was doing. So got to go win that one against SMU. Just bury the ponies, bury Rhett Lashley and his one of the top 3 conferences in the country deal. That guy, make him be the one to lose twice to the Big 12 in the non-con. Would love that. Would love that, Joe. This is also very true, Joe. This is also very true. That Georgia game is all that anybody really remembers. Like nobody, I think the most forgotten college football win of the last decade is TCU beating Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. Like nobody talks about it at all anymore. And Michigan would then go on to win the national championship and have an unbeaten season the next year. It's crazy. It is crazy how forgotten that game is. So yeah, I feel you on that, Joe. Thank you, everybody filing in. Please do like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Many of you who watch, continue. It's always like 60-40 people who watch, not subscribed. So it would mean a lot if you would just click subscribe to the channel. Helps the channel get in front of more people. And it's totally free. Same with liking the video. If you do, if you are so inclined, you want to submit a super chat, you can click the $ below the chat box to do that and get your question or comment on the show tonight. Guarantees that you will make it on. Plus, on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. If you're not watching live and you want to submit a question or comment there, you can do so. I'll kick off the next show with it. Also, make sure and sign up for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. You can join 5,100 plus Big 12 fans who are subscribed already. All right, so there's a huge opportunity on the table next week for the Big 12. And if nobody blows it this week, like Arizona State did last week, unfortunately, sorry, Sun Devils. I keep saying it like that. Look, I would not count Arizona State out at all. All right, they barely beat Mississippi State at home at this time last year. They wound up winning the Big 12. But you can't have a slip up like that for the Big 12 to fully capitalize on the opportunity that awaits next week. All right. If we're looking on the surface at this week, it's just not nearly as exciting on paper as last week was in the Big 12 when you had Kansas, Mizzou, you had Baylor, SMU, you had Arizona State going to Mississippi State. It was a week on paper that had a lot more, one, opportunity to it, and two, just general excitement. This week, you start looking down the list. It's 3 teams favored by more than 3 touchdowns. I forgot Cyhawk last week too, by the way. You've got 3 teams playing FCS teams. So essentially you have like 6 teams that would be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. You've got a weird non-conference matchup between conference teams, one of whom was projected to be terrible, one of whom actually is terrible right now. You've got one conference game, which I do think is very interesting, and you've got one great rivalry in the backyard brawl, but it doesn't have the same juice. It doesn't have the same juice as last year's or last week's schedule did, rather, on paper. But there is this big opportunity if both Utah and Texas Tech can take care of business this week and win. Okay. In fact, really, there's opportunity abound because I said I think that, well, first of all, the second most intriguing game to me behind Backyard Brawl is Houston, Colorado. And to me, it's a golden opportunity for Houston. I was told this week that I do not respect the Cougs enough. That'd be the Houston Cougs. Okay. Listen, I love Willie Fritz. He grew up literally like within a mile of where I sit right now. Okay. Very close to where I'm at right now. Kansas City guy. I have said I think Houston definitely can take a big step up this year, but they need to go prove it. Houston also, look, if anybody should respect Houston, it's me. Houston broke K-State football last year. Cats are 3-5, I think, since then. Houston broke K-State football last year, all right? I respect the Cougs. But if Houston really is going to make the jump up to being like a 7-8 win team this year, it's a game that you need to win. It's a game that you need to win tomorrow. We get a double dip of Big 12 football tomorrow, by the way. It's a game you need to win. Colorado at home. It's Colorado starting who was their third string quarterback at the beginning of the year, a guy who's been a career backup. Colorado was a little slow getting going against Delaware last week. They lost week 1 to Georgia Tech. They're still shuffling in and out, as discussed, the quarterback thing, and just trying to figure themselves out after everything that they lost last year. Houston, you got to go win this game. Now, all signs point to a lot of positivity in the world of the Cougars right now. Their defense is second in the Big 12 in scoring defense, second in the Big 12 in total defense. I know that everybody loves the traditional stats anymore, but the defense with a new defensive coordinator this year just keeps on ticking after losing Sheil Wood to Texas Tech, which I would expect that out of a Willie Fritz team, that they're still going to have a good defense. All signs point to that unit is still pretty strong. Is Connor Wegman going to be a guy that in the Big 12 can go out and win you a bunch of games? His pedigree would suggest yes, being a former 5-star recruit. What we have actually seen from him at the Power 4 level would suggest there's a ways to go there. But again, early returns pretty good. He's got 5 touchdowns total and no turnovers so far this year. I think that's good and encouraging. I'm worried about the turnovers with Connor Wegman. Ryan Staub at Colorado is an awesome story. I mean, I love that. Also, very funny that Dion was out here calling him Martin Luther Staub because he said, "I have a dream." That sideline interview was great. Okay, but really interesting. I mean, Juju Lewis and Caden Salter both get brought to Big 12 Media Days, and neither guy in week 3 is starting. And you're throwing out to begin conference play Ryan Staub. That really kind of goes against, I feel like, what a lot of people accuse or Dion haters think that he actually is. I mean, unless you think this is all just some massive, dramatic, motivational ploy for the other two quarterbacks, which it may be to some degree. But if you think that's the only reason it's happening for Ryan Staub, I don't know. I think this actually is showing Dion to have more character than the haters would give him credit for. Okay. So I'm very interested in that game. But Houston, prove it to me. You think I don't give you enough respect? Go beat Colorado this week. Go beat Colorado tomorrow. The K-State Arizona game tomorrow, by the way, I don't know that anybody cares that much to hear that much about it. But I mean, look, it's a non-con game. Theoretically, on paper, it means virtually nothing to K-State's season. You're not going to get an at-large bid. So what good does a non-conference win really do for you? Doesn't hurt you that much. If you lose, you would still just need to go win the Big 12, go win conference games. The only thing I could see is if you say, well, if K-State gets hot somehow, wins the Big 12, but they had lost that game to Arizona, maybe they wouldn't be one of the top 5 highest ranked conference champs at the end of the year. Maybe. But really, it's pretty meaningless. Except it means everything. Because if K-State starts 1-3 and loses another game and has to endure another week of excuse making and negativity and fans give it, I don't know how that locker room's holding up. It's also the 4-game mark when guys could choose to pack it in and save their red shirt. Not something K-State wants to be dealing with. So I think it's actually very, important. And it's a validation game of sorts for Arizona, just like I talked about with Houston a moment ago. Arizona's been very impressive enough to make the SP Plus playoff projection. If the season ended today, well, go validate it against a team that's been one of the most consistent near the top in the Big 12 over the last 3 or 4 years in K-State. It can be a very validating game for Brent Brennan. Plus, just picking off 3 wins to start the season is marked progress from last year for Arizona. What's the other one? Oh, Backyard Brawl. I still haven't gotten to Backyard Brawl. Look, I love Backyard Brawl. Personal favorite of mine. Any of these rivalries that is just a bunch of like rational and irrational hate in college football that has roots, a ton of history. I mean, I'm all for it. And it reminds me of KU Mizzou, like 2 rivalries just filled with all this hate. You know, I mean, KU Mizzou, we had an amputee getting a chance to kick a 45-yard field goal to win $25,000 last week, and he decided instead to turn toward the Kansas sideline and kick the ball as hard as he could at KU's sideline and then lift up his shirt, which said FKU. I mean, that's what I'm talking about when it comes to rivalry stuff in college football. I feel like Pitt, West Virginia is very much in line with that. And it's almost always a close game. And underdogs always have a great shot in this one. I don't need to remind West Virginia fans of the most obvious example of that. But then a couple years later, that was 2009, right, where the script was kind of flipped on a top 10 Pitt team by West Virginia. The 3 games since the series has been renewed have been decided by an average of 7 points per game. Like last year's game, even though, again, not something West Virginia fans want to be reminded about, but it was a terrific finish and a thrilling game. So I think Backyard Brawl will be a close game, despite the fact that, I mean, tough week for West Virginia, losing Jaheim White and Jaden Bray for the season. That's really, really difficult. So I feel for West Virginia fans on that one, but I'm not going to lie. Everything, the build up to it and everything that's happened so far for West Virginia and how rough last week was, it feels like it's all setting up for them to go win the Backyard Brawl. That's the vibe that I get based on what that rivalry typically is. But the bottom line is Texas Tech and Utah, don't screw this up, man. Going to have a great top 20 matchup next week between Tech and Utah that can really get some national attention. Big Noon is going to be there already, but it loses some of that luster if one of these 2 teams has lost to either Wyoming or Oregon State this week. Go win that game, set up your top 20 matchup, get people talking about the Big 12 and having one of the biggest games of the week, and us right out of the chute getting what looks like one of the Big 12 games of the year. Needs as much hype and build up as possible. Get eyeballs on it, get attention to it. I already said Utah seems to have earned a lot of respect, whether or not you think TCU should be on the same plane. Utah's earned a lot of respect, and Texas Tech have the attention of everybody. What are they going to do with it? We'll see. But their portal haul has the absolute attention of the college football world, and people want to see what's going to happen with that. So you've got everybody looking now, Joey McGuire. What are you going to do with it? As far as these games, I mean, look, I will say a little scared about Utah going to Wyoming just because I saw what happened to Texas Tech there a couple of years ago. Laramie has been a place where Power 4 teams can go down. Texas Tech, Virginia, Missouri, and Ole Miss have all lost games there in the last quarter century. Wyoming is 4-7 in that time span against Power 4 opponents. So more win than lose, but it's definitely a losable game. Even if Wyoming, I mean, they don't really look all that impressive. They beat Akron 10-0, I think. It's not the most impressive team in the world, but that's a very weird place to play. Devin Dampier kept it rolling last week, 371 yards, 3 touchdowns. Or no, excuse me. It's my stat from last year. Devin Dampier rolled all over Wyoming last season. That probably helps. I mean, Utah, at least geographically, is fairly close. Altitude's not going to be like a thing for them. That probably helps a little bit. But yeah, Dampier had 371 and 3 touchdowns on these guys last year. I mean, Utah should be fine. But in a game at Wyoming, feels a little bit like, Tech hosts Oregon State. I wouldn't think at home Tech's going to have much of a problem there. Oregon State lost to the same Fresno team that Kansas completely throttled in week 1. Texas Tech's been busy just making teams look silly. I know it's Kent State and Arkansas Pine Bluff, but making them look totally, totally silly. They've outscored their opponents 95-0 in the first half, first 2 weeks of the season. Pretty crazy number there for Texas Tech. But need both of those teams to take care of business to create as much hype around Texas Tech Utah as we possibly can. That game may or may not turn out to be a big game by the end of the year, because I will remind everybody that last year, I was so hyped for Utah at Oklahoma State, and that was right at this time of the season. And that wound up by the end of the year being a game where we were like, okay, well, swing and a miss from all of us on that one. A team that went winless in the Big 12 and a team that was sub 500 and didn't make a bowl game. So things can change. They can change very quickly. Some of us, your boy included, had some bad takes around that game at the time. So, but for now, build all the hype. Build all the hype that you can. I don't think these teams are going to be 2024 Oklahoma State and 2024 Texas Tech. Please do like the video. Power rankings are coming up next. Subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody who is here, as always. And you can submit a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box if you want to guarantee that your question or comment makes it on tonight. Appreciate everybody who does that if you're able to support in that way. You can also do so on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. If you do so, I will kick off the next show with your comment. And subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. ofbnews.com. Big 12 power ranking time. I've got some Big 12 power rankings for you. I will tell you it's unchanged at the top, but there's been a lot of change everywhere else, and some of these changes really pain me. But you got to do what you got to do based on what you've seen in the Big 12 so far up to this point. Okay? So let me go ahead and get this up for you. Let's do this. There we go. Here are your Big 12 power rankings for the week. They are the Open for Business Big 12 power rankings, which is a great reminder, ofbnews.com to subscribe, and you would have gotten these already. The Open for Business Big 12 power rankings at the bottom. I say it pains me. Look, you guys know I'm a K-State guy. I got to go 15. I would consider 16. It's like, do I think K-State would have lost by 66 at Oregon? Probably not. Probably not. That felt a bit worse for me. But K-State's got to be 15. They should be 0-3. They should have a loss to North Dakota. It's very tough. If you want to say, hey, homer pick by not putting K-State 16th, fine. I'll listen to it. They're bad right now until proven otherwise. Tough for West Virginia. Tough for West Virginia to lose to Ohio, but they're staying in essentially the same spot because I'm not going to ding them for a loss to at least a solid Ohio squad when West Virginia lost its best skill position player and one of its best skill position players in the game. UCF, look at UCF making a little jump up. Just take care of business at home. Wait for everybody else to screw up. And suddenly the Knights are moving on up. Arizona taking a little bit of a jump up. Take care of business. Weber State, get Fafita looking like the old Fafita. You can start to creep on up there. More upward mobility for Arizona, too, if they win tomorrow in that game against K-State. Colorado holding steady. Delaware game didn't move me a ton. Although the quarterback situation is now very interesting. That makes me honestly more interested to watch the game against Houston. The fact that they're starting Ryan Staub. What a story that could be if he legitimately wins that job and takes it over. And then you got Dion having to worry about, well, man, I don't know exactly what they're paying Juju Lewis and Caden Salter to be there, but I'm sure it's more than what Ryan Staub's making. And if you got those guys sitting on the bench, could be a fascinating situation that develops there. And look at this, Colorado and Houston back-to-back. Houston haters will say that's not enough respect. Okay, fine. Look, great win over Rice. It was still 14-3 going into the fourth quarter, but it turned into a total blowout, whitewashed them in the fourth. That's fine. That's good. That's great. You should be taking care of Rice that way. Rice may be a little feistier this year based on what we saw in week one. Cincinnati, though, because of their performance against an actual team, like a team from the Big Ten with Nebraska, and then taking care of Bowling Green, no real problem last week. I think Cincinnati has done more to earn that right now. But again, upward mobility for the Cougs. Arizona State drops from 4 to 8. I am not writing the eulogy on the Sun Devils just yet. I think that would be foolish to do so. Yes, it has been a disappointing start. Yes, it looks like it's taking Sam Leavitt and the Arizona State offense some time to figure itself out, gather itself after losing Cam Scadaboo. That makes sense. And I would just reiterate, that Arizona State's fall, like the word out of fall camp for ASU was that the defense was going to be ahead of the offense. So this is not really like shocking to see that. And it was always going to be a tougher game at Mississippi State than people would give that credit for. Kansas falls from 6 to 7. I still think a pretty strong performance at Missouri. I mean, they were like one play away from winning that game. I know you'll look at the final score and say, John, it was an 11-point game, but Kansas is up by 4, has Mizzou in a 4th and 7 over midway through the fourth quarter. If they get that stop, even if they can just drive down and kick a field goal from there, I think it may be enough to get the job done and win the game. BYU, just unknown. I don't know. Maybe BYU fans would be upset with being behind Baylor. It's just Baylor has the best win to me in the Big 12 so far this year by going on the road at SMU. Not just winning, but winning the way they did, like showing the gumption, toughness that they had to show to win after falling behind by 14 with under 5 minutes left in the game. It's impressive stuff. And Sawyer Robertson looks like a guy who's legitimately capable of carrying Baylor to a Big 12 championship game. If the defense can just give him anything. Please, Baylor defense, give Sawyer Robertson something. Help the guy out just a little bit. But BYU will have plenty of opportunity, ample opportunity to prove that they really belong in that group of the top 4. It's just Stanford's awful at the moment. So did what you should do against them. Defense looks as good as advertised. Bear Bachmeier, we'll see. We'll see what happens in Big 12 play. Baylor, I'm giving them respect, jumping them back up 3 spots after disappointing loss. I was very disappointed in Baylor with what happened against Auburn, but they atoned for a decent amount of that. By what they did at SMU. Frankly, you could argue Baylor over Texas Tech, but just because, Texas Tech's been so freaking dominant. The eye test is telling me you need to include them right now in the top 4 until proven otherwise. That's one, like, if you were just looking at the scores of the Texas Tech games, it might not resonate as much. But if you're actually watching the way that this looks, especially Kent State, Pine Bluff, I know that Kent State's not good either, but Kent State, that's a step up from Pine Bluff. And just watching that, it was just like, these it does not look like they're playing the same game right now. TCU at 3, Utah at 2, after I just gave you the spiel about TCU and Utah basically doing the same thing so far this year. I gave TCU the disrespect, Joe. I'm sorry. I gave TCU the disrespect of being 3 as opposed to 2. That's really just based on my preconceived notion of the teams coming into the year. Slight edge to Utah because I thought a little more highly of them coming into the year. And Iowa State at 1. Nobody in the conference has a better resume than Iowa State. Yeah, that's a pretty unassailable resume at this point relative to the rest of the Big 12. You just can't do anything else with them. They've already beaten a Big 10 team. They've already won a conference game against, I guess you could say, well, K-State sucks. And K-State sure looks like they're not very good right now. But it was, at the time, a team that had not had any real reason to doubt itself and was the preseason favorite to win the league. So neutral site win there. Home win over a Big 10 squad, and then just demolishing a good FCS team. Nobody's touching that resume right now in the Big 12. So, that's what I got. That's what I got, guys, with the power rankings. Let me know in the comments where you disagree. I'm sure there's plenty of disagreement everywhere. On the power rankings. That is fine. That's what they are there for. Okay? That is what they are there for. Okay, please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are here. Appreciate everybody who's here. I guess I can go and pop my Pop the old graphic back up there, the overlay. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. That is ofbnews.com. Join 5,000 plus other Big 12 fans who are already subscribed. And John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to leave a question or comment there. If you're not watching live, I will kick off the next show with your question or comment if you do that. I've got one last planned segment for you here, okay? One last. If you click the $ below the chat box, you can submit a super chat, get me talking about something else if you want before the end of the show. But look, coaching carousel, coaching news already. News in quotation marks, I suppose. But one Big 12 coach is the most likely coach in the country to be fired. That's update number one. Update number two is another Big 12 coach is suddenly a candidate for a job at two different Power 2 schools. One in the SEC, one in the Big 10. Yeah. At least according to what we are seeing right now from the gambling world and from ESPN. Okay. So if you would have asked me before the season, John, by week 3, who is the Big 12 coach that would be most likely to be number one on the list of coaches about to be fired? And in fact, the way it's phrased, next coach to be fired in college football. That's the list. There are odds on it. If you told me, John, in week 3, leading up to the games, one Big 12 coach is going to be number one on that list, I probably would have guessed that like Brent Brennan lost to Weber State, or like maybe Scott Satterfield losing to Bowling Green. I think that's where my mind would have drifted first. And Scott Satterfield is on this list, by the way. Okay, so it's not, I'm not totally abstaining him from all of this. Scott Satterfield is on the list, but it's neither of those two. All right, it's neither of those two. Let's bring this up for you. Show you these odds. Show you these odds because it is important as far as the Big 12 goes. So, why are we not showing up? Why are we not showing up? There we go. It's Mike Gundy. It's Mike Gundy, folks. Mike Gundy is the most likely to be the next coach fired in college football. This according to bookies.com. Here are the odds that you can see in the implied probability. Now, Mike Gundy is in there at number 1. Scott Satterfield's down at number 8, just behind Lincoln Riley, just ahead of Kalen DeBoer, which is where I do have some issues with this list. I would not spend any of your hard-earned money betting Mike Gundy to be the next coach in college football to be fired. If this were a list of, it's all about how it's phrased, right? If this were a list of like just coaches, odds that a coach will be fired, that changes things. But Oklahoma State, I've got news for bookies.com or anybody who's going to take that number. Oklahoma State is not firing Mike Gundy mid-season. Like, that's not going to happen. The guy has done enough to earn the right to coach out the rest of the year. So I think it's pretty crazy to see that above Billy Napier. Like, guys, if somebody's getting fired in season, Billy Napier is the guy that would be getting fired in season. SEC job, they were already basically out on him last year until he saved his job and kept it on life support. A similar situation to what Gundy did, having to restructure his contract and all that last year, except Billy Napier does not have the built-up cachet that Mike Gundy does. I mean, if Billy Napier, who plays one of the toughest schedules in the country, if Billy Napier starts losing games and he's 1-3 in the SEC, it'll just be lights out. Okay. I don't know that Napier is making it through the season. And how about, Kalen DeBoer? I know the buyout is crazy there. I know that's an issue, but Kalen DeBoer, man, being behind Scott Satterfield, guys, let's just say it out loud. Who's more likely to get fired in season, Kalen DeBoer or Scott Satterfield? Kalen DeBoer. I mean, Bama fans are already ready to run him out. There was the clip going around to the woman in Alabama who got asked, what would you do if you won the Powerball? And the first thing she said was pay the buyout for Kalen DeBoer to get him out of there. Texas A&M's done it with a similar buyout in what they felt like was a desperate situation. Desperate times, desperate measures in Tuscaloosa, man. So I would do this. I would do this list a little bit differently. All right. Now, the point of me sharing this with you is not merely to take these as gospel, but it is to talk about this and the situation now. Like it does, it sounds like Mike Gundy doesn't have a ton of allies left at Oklahoma State if he's going to continue losing. I mean, I don't know that 69-3 is like you can't come back to from that period, because if he MacGyvers this thing together and gets them into a Big 12 championship game like he did a couple of seasons ago, I mean, you're not going to get rid of him at that point. But it sure seems like an uphill battle. You know, that's a big hill to climb, particularly if you're not going to have Haas Haney at quarterback. That's going to be a really difficult thing to do. So what's the threshold here? Like if Mike Gundy's going to go 5-7, 4-8, something like that this year, I mean, I think it's going to be really tough for him to stick around. And I get that he's a legend. I get that he should have a statue out in front of Boone Pickens Stadium. The guy basically is Oklahoma State football, but he already was close enough to being run out of town that he had to take a pay cut and restructure his contract just last offseason. Okay. So this is a real thing. I'm sure the politics of it could be a little bit tricky, but Gundy doesn't have a reputation for being a guy who's cozying up to a lot of donors. So again, I just wonder about what kind of allyship he has left around there. And it's also a very interesting situation where Chad Weiberg, the athletic director, his contract does not extend beyond this year as of right now. He's kind of a lame duck AD at this point. There's a new university president. The old university president was supposedly really tight with Gundy. Now there's a new one. So there is a bit of a leadership vacuum in general at Oklahoma State, which makes that really interesting. I had a chance to talk today with Carson Cunningham, who is really well connected on this, does a podcast for Pistols Firing. He used to work in TV in Oklahoma City. It'll be posted tomorrow morning. It's really, really good stuff. I would highly encourage you listening to that. So I'm excited for y'all to hear that. But I think this is a situation worth monitoring for sure. I will say, if Oklahoma State fans want some hope, because I see Bobby saying feel for the Pokes, their AD is about to exit as well. I do feel for Oklahoma State fans. It's a rough time, and that program has not seen times like this in quite a while. But the name that's out there as a potential replacement, I mean, Zach Robinson, like that's pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting. Long way to go. We'll see what happens. I'm not trying to be the one to fire Mike Gundy here today. The guy has been a 9 lives type of coach before. I think the question just is, has he used up life 8, or has he already used up life 9? Is there anything left to pull out of the hat? Now, as far as Big 12 coach being mentioned as a candidate, a couple of different places, it is not Matt Campbell. All right. I hate to spoil it for everybody. It is not Matt Campbell. It is Lance Leipold. Lance Leipold's name was mentioned a couple of times in a big ESPN article about coaches on the hot seat. The first job that was being discussed was Florida. So Adam Rittenberg was actually the one kicking around the Florida job. And first candidate, Dan Lanning, which he was saying not likely, but you probably go at least try and do that. Like, I mean, okay, I guess. I think Dan Lanning would be crazy to take that on. Lane Kiffin was the next, and Lane Kiffin makes, I think, a lot of sense for that job if Florida wants him. Then we got Washington's Jed Fish, which, interesting to Arizona fans. And I think some were surprised he took the Washington job thinking, hey, wait around for Florida. It's coming open soon. Eli Drinkwitz makes this list. That's definitely a guy I could see jumping to a job like that. I mean, I don't know if I would do it if I were Florida, but Drinkwitz has proven me wrong over the last couple of years. Then you get down to Alex Golish at South Florida, which would seemingly be like a slam dunk outside of the fact that I'm sure Florida fans feel like, well, we basically did that when we hired Billy Napier. We took the hot G5 name that was regionally pretty close to us, like in SEC country, and that has not worked at all. Then you get to Lance Leipold. So then Lance Leipold's name is listed by Adam Rittenberg. So that's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's like 6th. on the list. And frankly, the Florida job, that seems like a weird fit, right? Especially Leipold's 61. At this stage, does he want to go take on a pressure cooker job where, you could be done in 2 or 3 years if things go I mean, you could be done in 2 years if things go poorly there at Florida, where they're going to have a short fuse. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a guy who's going to do that and say, well, it'll be make a bunch of cash even if it doesn't work out. That does not feel like a Lance Leipold job to me. What does make more sense is Wisconsin, although the problem there is the Luke Fickell buyout. But Mark Schlabach, who's also writing in this article for ESPN, mentions Wisconsin, mentions the struggle that Luke Fickell is having right now. And much earlier in that article, he brings up Lance Leipold as a potential replacement here. Now, Luke Fickell's buyout is over $40 million at Wisconsin. So does Wisconsin have $40 million to buy out Luke Fickell? I have no idea. That seems like a bit of a stretch. But here's what Schlabach said about Lance Leipold. Said Leipold is a fascinating candidate to examine. The 61-year-old could finish his career at Kansas. He also could make one big move. If he does, I see him ending up in the Big Ten, especially if a job like Wisconsin opens. Leipold is from the state and spent 3 years as a Wisconsin graduate assistant early in the Barry Alvarez tenure there. So he's got history. Obviously, his Wisconsin Whitewater time adds up to being another regional play here. I don't know if you would consider that like totally returning home, but Big Ten, first of all, just stylistically seems to fit him more. Wisconsin as a program and identity seems to fit him more. And then he has the tie of actually being there at Wisconsin before. I mean, that is one that if I'm a Kansas fan, I would be a little concerned about if it comes open. But again, I don't know that Wisconsin has the appetite to swallow a $40 million buyout. It might depend on just how bad things go for Luke Fickell. You'd be rooting for Wisconsin, certainly against Alabama this week, but that is a game where I could see that getting really out of hand for poor Wisconsin this week, going without their starting quarterback to Alabama. Motivated Alabama after what happened against Florida State a couple of weeks ago. So just on the radar. I mean, I think the Gundy thing right now, it feels more likely than not that he would not be the coach there next year, just based on how this season is trending. But he can turn it around. Leipold going anywhere, I'll believe it when I see it, because I think the Wisconsin job might be about the only one that would both be big enough for him to go and not one of the top 5 to 10 jobs in the country that might have him lower on their lists, right? Sort of the sweet spot there. But 40 million reasons to believe that is a long shot. Anyway, we always know one constant: death, taxes, and everybody's going to be fishing around the Big 12 for coaches, because there are a lot of good coaches in the Big 12, and they have not gone to these Power 2 jobs nearly as often as people thought they would a couple of years ago when this big gap developed between the Big 10, SEC, and everybody else. So, all right. I think that's going to wrap it up for me tonight. That's what I got for you guys. Please do like the video on your way out. Please subscribe to the channel. Huge Twitter audience tonight. You guys, I know you like to read your news. OFBnews.com to get the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Comes to your inbox twice a week for free. 5,000 plus Big 12 fans already reading it. Would love it if you subscribe to that. OFBnews.com. I hope you all enjoy the College Football Saturday. I am going to try and pop on and stream for an hour or so on Saturday before the games start. See if we can keep that tradition going. Make sure you watch tomorrow morning for the video with Carson Cunningham talking about Oklahoma State. Just really, really insightful stuff on what's going on with Gundy. He is about as plugged in as anybody on that situation. So it's tremendous, tremendous content there. All right. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Hope you have a great end of the week. And thank you all for being here. Take care.